All right, set? Okay, there we go. There we go. So good morning, everyone. I just noted for President Massa and Secretary Clinton that we have a sellout crowd. It's great. If there are more people who can squeeze in, that would be great. I'm Fred Kemp. I'm President and CEO of the Atlantic Council. And on behalf of myself and also Jorge Gasto Lamendi, who is the fearless leader of the Adrienne Arch Rockefeller Foundation Resilience Center, and on behalf of his remarkable team, and to be honest, on behalf of a huge team that we have from the Atlantic Council, from 9 of our programs and centers, the Middle East, Latin America, Africa, our Global Energy Center, we're all over the place here at COP28 because of our commitment, not only to the issues, but to moving the needle on these issues. And that's what we're here to do today. Our mission is to shape the global future together, and we take those words very seriously. Shape. We don't want to observe, we want to shape. Global future, it's up for grabs, it's up to us. And together, never alone, always with allies, always with partners. Climate change is a global crisis with unavoidable impacts. It is disrupting communities, ecosystems, and economies in all corners of the world. This past summer was the hottest on record. And temperature record after temperature record has been shattered. Unfortunately, if we do not step up and meet the climate targets, these impacts will only continue to accelerate. Global warming has already made heat waves more intense and frequent. The crisis is here, and it's now. But what I also see, what I think all of us feel at this year's COP, is an opportunity for hope. We are coming together from different countries and across multiple sectors to drive this conversation and drive also a global consensus on the ambitious and impactful solutions we need to reduce the impacts of heat stress on people and the places they live. We have a compelling program here for you today, and I'm honored to introduce our first speaker, the Asian Development Bank President, Masatsugu Asakawa. And prior to his time at the Asian Development Bank, he was special advisor to the Japanese Prime Minister, to Minister of Finance, and for 4 decades before that held important positions in the Ministry of Finance, both on domestic and international affairs. So over to you, President Masa.
Thank you, Secretary Clinton, Minister Tabuya, President Calderon, Lord Mayor of Melbourne, Sally Capp, Eleni Milividi, guests, ladies and gentlemen. As you know, climate change is threatening societies, economies, and people. It has reshaped this planet, including through the dangerous impacts of heat stress. With 2023 on track to be the hottest year on record, the risks are growing to public health, agriculture, water resources, biodiversity, and economic productivity. Adding to this disturbing reality is a disproportionate effect of heat stress on women. Imagine the life of a young woman in Asia and the Pacific. She works in a factory, in the fields, or even an informal workplace in worsening conditions. Her hours may increase because others will not work during heat waves. Due to social norms, she may not be able to find shade or wear lighter clothing. When her family becomes ill from heat, the burden of care falls on her. If she is pregnant, the risk is miscarriage or stillbirth will increase due to the heat. She may also be exposed to a greater risk of gender-based violence. My friends, as the world talks about the need to build resilience to climate change, it cannot overlook the impact of heat stress on women. As I have said before, development is no longer possible without addressing climate change issue. Just as important, addressing heat stress is not possible without focusing on women. And so, I'm so proud to announce a strong step towards answering that call. Today, we are launching a $3.8 million three-year technical assistance project to strengthen women's resilience to heat stress. Thank you. ADB will invest in knowledge about the gendered impact of heat stress on economies, productivity, health, food security, and violence. We will support our developing member countries, DMCs, on heat action planning that is gender responsive and identify solutions that government can invest in. We will work initially in 5 countries: Bangladesh, Cambodia, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and Tajikistan. This work has the potential to inform billions of dollars of investment in building resilience against heat. These investments across many sectors will help to preserve productivity and protect women, who are key drivers of economies and societies. I am pleased to announce that this initiative with Asset Rock. We look forward to working with them as part of the Global Shield financing facility to support insurance to women for heat resilience. So I very much thank Secretary Clinton for her critical contributions to the initiative. Thank you very much. My friends, our work together shows us that meeting the challenges of heat stress can also be an opportunity to build a more equitable and sustainable future. I am optimistic about this future because of our partnership. I look forward to learning about the outcomes of this project. I am sure they will be reflected not only in the resilience of the things we build, but in the lives of women and girls we serve. Thank you very much for your attention.
President Masa, thank you so much for that exciting announcement. It's a fantastic endeavor, and we are delighted to be a partner with you and with the other partners we'll bring along in this endeavor. At the Clinton Global Initiative in September, the Atlantic Council made a pledge to do work in this direction. Secretary Clinton, we deliver on our pledges. And that brings me to introducing Secretary Hillary Clinton to join us to share her views on heat stress in women and why it is critical to elevate solutions that address the issue. We are so proud that Secretary Clinton is not only the recipient in 2013 of the Atlantic Council's highest award, our Distinguished International Leadership Award, she also acts as our global ambassador for heat, health, and gender at the Atlantic Council's Arch Rockefeller Foundation Resilience Center. Secretary Clinton, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Fred, and thanks to all of you who are gathered here, and thanks especially to the Asian Development Bank. Thank you, Mr. President, for this commitment, and thank you for the way you described it. I really want to commend you for recognizing the impact on women who, as you said, work in the fields, the factories, and the informal sector. Your summary of the thinking behind this grant is absolutely right. And I hope that more and more funders in philanthropy, development banks, the private sector will understand the significance of this commitment by you. And I hope we can give him another round of applause for this very, very far-sighted understanding. It is important that we focus on this discussion about extreme heat because it is the biggest killer of all the climactic changes. We get more attention to storms and wildfires and droughts, but the loss of life that is directly connected to rising temperatures is because of extreme heat. And we are now turning our attention to this terrible problem because the magnitude of the threat will only grow. Climate-driven extreme heat poses significant social, health, and economic risks, and they fall disproportionately on women. You know, women represent 80% of climate refugees, and when women are displaced, they are at increased risk of violence, human trafficking, stalled and maybe even ended education and employment opportunities. And women are more likely to die in natural disasters. And we also know that the impact, as we heard, on pregnant women is especially dangerous. And, you know, it's really ironic because the people most affected by climate change, including extreme heat, are the ones who contribute least to climate change and yet bear the biggest burden. As Fred mentioned, the Clinton Global Initiative, the Atlantic Council, through the Adrienne Arsht Rockefeller Foundation Climate Resilience Center, have partnered to focus on this. We started with a partnership with the Self-Employed Women's Association in India, which has nearly 3 million women members, and those members are now coping with the effects of extreme heat. And they have to find ways to mitigate the harm to themselves, and that includes an extreme heat insurance policy, and that's part of the work of the Atlantic Council's Extreme Heat Wave Alliance to help compensate women who are in the informal economy for lost wages when they literally cannot work because of the impact of heat. And this is a way we are trying to get very practical in helping women adapt and solve problems they did not create. Because when they have access to resilience funds or electric mini grids or clean cook stoves or solar panels, it can have a transformational impact on their lives, their families, and their communities. So we're thrilled that we launched a special Women and Girls Pillar at the Clinton Global Initiative meeting in September in 2023, in part to focus on the disproportionate climate impacts on women and girls and to find ways to solve these problems. You're about to hear from a panel that is very focused on how to deal with extreme heat. I've used the statistic before because we don't have reliable statistics, but we do have reliability about this one. Last summer alone, 61,000 people in Europe died from extreme heat. We don't have the statistic to the same extent in, Africa, many parts of Asia, Latin America, but this one we know. And if you think of 61,000 people dying in Europe, you can multiply that by, a factor of 5, 10, even more. So what you're going to hear from the panel is very much online about what we need to be doing, to define the problem, to examine the problem, to do the research that's necessary, and to make the case why dealing with extreme heat with a particular emphasis on women and girls is a climate-driven imperative. So I thank very much the Asian Development Bank, the Atlantic Council, and all of our partners, including CGI, to really help elevate this issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for being here, Secretary Clinton. We have two other short interventions from leaders in this field before we turn to our panel. I'm now delighted to welcome our next speaker, the Arsht Rockefeller Center's Global Ambassador for Heat Action, the Global Ambassador for Heat Action, President Felipe Calderon, to make his remarks.
Good morning. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you to the Asian Development Bank for the invitation, to Atlantic Council to Ash Rock Foundation, especially for Resilience Center. Let me be honest with you in several things. One is I would love to be as optimistic as the president is today, and I used to be optimistic. It doesn't mean that I lost hope. I still have hope, but I'm not pessimistic either, but I try to be realistic. And the reality shows that we are far away from the trend we need to go in our goal to be in 1.5 Celsius degrees as much. But nevertheless, that takes me to the event in which we are today, and is thinking about the consequences of that. Of course, I'm a fighter. I try to be a warrior in the honest combat and still on the side of mitigation. But the second thing in which I want to be honest is that thanks to Ash Rock Center, I became aware about the heat, and in particular the heat waves. I didn't know, to be honest, the figure that Secretary Clinton was saying a few minutes ago. And it was The Lancet, this very famous health publication, that estimated that in the year 2019, almost 500,000 people, to be precise, 489,000 people died one way or another related with heat and heat waves in the world. 500,000 people. That means that heat is the biggest killer, or more precisely, the silent killer of climate change. There is no more dangerous enemy of the people as a consequence of climate change than heat, and in particular heat waves. Everybody is suffering that. In my dear Mexico, this summer, there are several places, San Luis Rio Colorado, El Valle del Yaqui, that reach above 50 Celsius degrees in the summer, 50 Celsius. And out of 32 states, all of them pass several days with 35 Celsius degrees, above 35. So we are suffering the consequence already. It's not going to be in the future. It's not going to be in the year 2050. It's not going to be at the end of the millennium. So for me, that's one of the reasons, the most important why I accepted the responsibility and the honor to be ambassador for heat of the Ash Rock Center. And my duty, and I invite you all to do the same, is to call for actions in governments, in people, in society, in NGOs, everywhere, to take action on heat and heat waves. And we can do very simple, cost-effective things. For instance, in any city, we, Mexicans, we suffer a lot from hurricanes every single year. Recently, 1 month ago, a bit more, Hurricane Otis devastated Acapulco, affecting 1 million people population. 1 million. Probably 350 people died. But the important thing is, if we are able to name and establish a category in the hurricanes, why we don't do exactly the same with heat waves? You name it, we can categorize by using the alphabet, like in the hurricanes, or the zodiac if you want, or maybe the football teams in Europe, or whatever. But we can categorize, we must, because it's the only way in which people could be aware about what is coming. You have an elderly people, your father, your mother, you need to take care of them. You have baby, you are living in a dangerous place, you need to take a safe place. The government needs to build refugees and so on. We need to invite people to establish public policy, for instance, for cool roofs, for green roofs. We can order the governments to use cool pavement in order to reduce the heat waves in the cities. We can have tree canopies initiative. We can make a lot, even at individual size. For instance, I'm sorry, Frederick, I took away my tie as a measure against the heat in the place. I'm sorry for that. That is not very polite to be president in the presence of people like you. But anyway, so that's my call. We need to fight to reduce carbon emission. That's the source of the problem. That's the origin. We cannot ignore that. But at the same time, we need to deal with the consequence. And the worst of that, you need to pick only one consequence of climate change. That must be heat and heat waves. And the last but not least, the most important reason that get us together today is because, as always, the worst consequence affect the most unprotected people, and the most unprotected people always are women, workers, women, mothers, family, mothers in the farm, mothers in the land, mothers in any sector, you name it. So we're together. Thank you very much, and we are taking this message everywhere. Thank you.
President Calderon, you are inspirational in so many different ways. You can take your tie off whenever you're with us. And so, but that was wonderful. And speaking of inspirational speakers, this will be our last speaker before a really powerful panel. And it is my pleasure to invite the inspirational Fiji Minister for Women, Children, and Poverty Alleviation, the Honorable Linda Tabuya.
I'm profoundly honored to be here and to contribute to this critical discussion, and I thank my colleagues who've gone before me. Of course, Madam Secretary, my friend President Massa, President Felipe Calderon, and colleagues. Today I stand before you not only as a representative of the government of Fiji, but also a daughter of the Blue Pacific. I have made a promise to my people to use every corridor of power, every platform I am granted, to vividly portray the climate crisis and its profound effects on my beloved Blue Pacific and our people, and most importantly, our women and girls in all diversity. The climate crisis in our region is a stark, unyielding reality, not a distant threat or an abstract concept. The Pacific Ocean, with its vast expanse and warm waters, has been a breeding ground for some of the most powerful cyclones in the world. Every day we experience the profound impact of both rapid and gradual climatic shifts. Our lives are marked by rising average temperatures and intense heat waves, alongside the devastating impact of tropical cyclones and storms that ravage our lands. At the same time, the gradual yet relentless rise in sea levels, coupled with ocean warming and acidification, insidiously undermines the very foundation of our existence. This crisis challenges the resilience of our people. It tests our strength against coastal vulnerabilities, the encroachment of salt water into our agriculture fields, and the extensive damages inflicted upon health, livelihoods, industry, and infrastructure. It's a threat that extends beyond our physical structures to the very soul of our cultural identity, tradition, and lifestyle. Regrettably, this ecological crisis exacerbates a complex spectrum of social issues, as we've heard from my colleagues, including the displacement of our communities, the disruption of educational systems, deterioration of our health, increasing poverty, the overwhelming burden of unpaid care, mostly on women and girls, along with an alarming rise in gender-based violence, as mentioned by President Massa. These issues deeply affect the safety and well-being of our children and women and girls in all their diversity, impacting their safety and sexual and reproductive health rights. In recent days, I've had the opportunity to engage with allies, listen intently, and reflect deeply. This has increasingly convinced me of the necessity for us to forge stronger alliance for a just transition and gender-responsive approach to the climate crisis. To me, it's imperative to recognize that women's rights issues cannot be tackled in isolation. And I believe you all believe that too. The challenges are deeply interwoven and interlinked. Addressing women's empowerment and resilience in the climate crisis context demands a simultaneous focus on prevention of gender-based violence, access to sexual and reproductive health rights, shifts in societal norms, women's leadership, and of course the challenge of unpaid care work. To take in hand in any of these issues effectively, we must address them all and concurrently. Simplifying these complex challenges with basic solutions is also ineffective, especially as the climate crisis exacerbates each of these issues. And on this note, I also want to thank ADB and the President for this wonderful announcement this morning. In this context, climate finance is crucial, but gender-inclusive finance is more important. It's more important and vital for what we need to do. It's crucial that climate finance becomes truly accessible and beneficial for all women and girls in all their diversity. Currently, only, yes, definitely need more gender-inclusive finance. Currently, only 0.01% of worldwide climate change financing or funding is allocated to projects that address both climate issues and women's rights. We need to collectively recognize the connection between climate change and the unpaid care, domestic and communal work often done by women and girls. This commitment is essential in formulating and executing and assessing climate and environmental policies. We must focus on the enhancement of the participation of all women in STEM, retraining women for high-quality, low-carbon, meaningful, and decent jobs, creating green job opportunities for women, capitalizing on prospects in technology and renewable energy, and aiding women-led businesses in gaining access to finance. We must prioritize improving gender-sensitive climate data and statistics. We just heard some data this morning, but as President Massa rightly said, we need to gather more data and statistics in this area because this leads towards more gender-responsive budgeting processes, which are essential to track allocations and impacts across the entire climate change spectrum. In conclusion, as we all know, the urgency is great and the list of issues is extensive, but a just transition can only be achieved when we recognize that the plight of women and girls in all diversity is not just a mere checkbox or an afterthought. It is about our lives of half the planet's population. We've got to embrace this truth with urgency and seriousness. As we in the Islanders say, let's embrace Talanoa, or the way of inclusive dialogue. And I've extended the invitation to my panel members to come over to our region and come to Fiji and visit. But perhaps this will pave the way as we Talanoa more for a gender-responsive and just transition to become. We need the gender-responsive just transition to become a standing agenda item in COP29. Let's go for that. Thank you very much.
What an incredible lineup of speakers, and President Massa, thank you so much for this opportunity. Shaping the global future together, and this is a real shaping moment, and this is a real commitment, climate finance and gender equitable climate finance. Nothing could be more moving. So now I'm going to pass to the panel. I'll introduce the three panelists, if you could come up and take your seat. And then the moderator will be the leader of the R. Strock Center, Jorge Gastelamendi. And I'm not sure if you're going to stand or you're going to sit or you'll pull one up. So first of all, Minister Tabuya, please, if you'll join the panel. Lenio Miravelli, the Global Chief Heat Officer, UN Habitat and Senior Fellow, Adrian R. Rockefeller Foundation Resilience Center. And then it's our honor to have Sally Capp here, the Lord Mayor of Melbourne. Thank you for being here as well.
Well, let's get started with this distinguished panel. I would like to start. This is going to be a free-flowing interaction between the three distinguished panelists. And I would love to start with Minister Tabuya. As global evidence has shown, gender-based violence intensifies alongside the climate crisis, a point you briefly mentioned in your early remarks. Could you please share with us the actions Fiji is taking to address this critical issue? Specifically, how are these efforts integrated into the recent launch of Fiji's National Action Plan to prevent violence against all women and girls?
Thank you. Fiji faces some of the highest rates of gender-based violence, and in the Pacific, we have 2 out of 3 women that face some form of violence or intimate partner violence, some of the highest in the world. The National Action Plan to Prevent Violence Against All Women and Girls was a crucial initiative, but it was really about government in partnership with civil society, with women's rights, and with faith-based organizations. And the critical work that is done is that the need for government to work with civil society and the government to work with women's rights organizations. It's crucial. You cannot do it alone as government. Now, we, as I stated, have some of the highest rates of violence, and in June of 2023, we launched this Fiji National Action Plan, and it is the first in the Pacific and second only in the world behind Australia. So thank you, Australia, well done. I say that it is second only in the world or first in the Pacific because it's actually evidence-based. So all of government, all of society approach. And you know, data and statistics is vital to what we do. So we're confident moving forward that we will be able to implement this. And we thank also the Government of Australia for their support in the NAP. Now, in the heart of the Fiji NAP lies the recognition that gender inequality, of course, and dominance of men over women, as you call it, patriarchy is the underlying cause. But it requires us to unite as a nation. And to unite as a nation, come together. In this context, we are set to implement this NAP from early 2024. And this is collaborating again with women's rights organizations, civil society. And I also wish to thank the support of UN Women, who is partnering with us to be able to roll out this NAP, this National Action Plan. Now, it's important that for the first time, we have dedicated budget lines. And this is the first time we've ever achieved gender-responsive budgeting in our Fiji budget. It was because of the National Action Plan to prevent gender-based violence. So it's really great to achieve gender-responsive budgeting. We have the Ministry for Youth, the Ministry for Education, the Ministry for Itaukei, or Indigenous Affairs, and of course our ministry. And we hope that more of the ministries will be able to have this, because often ministries for women are isolated to be doing this work, but bringing in the other ministry together. The implementation of the NAP across 5 settings is deeply rooted in the context of climate crisis adaptation, risk management, and safety. As I emphasized earlier, we cannot address women's rights in isolation. This is precisely why the NAP and its holistic approach with substantial investments from development partners and government is crucial. Within the next 12 to 18 months, starting from 2024, our primary focus is priority actions across key settings such as education, sports, media, traditional, and faith and informal. In sports, we will prioritize the development of gender-responsive codes of conduct for 10 sports in collaboration with our relevant stakeholders, along with a community club initiative working with boys and players on respectful relationships. In the field of education, our primary focus will be on shifting gender discriminatory social norms through the revision or development of curricula. Within the faith-based and traditional settings, we will commence high-level conversations with our leaders, organizations, and communities, particularly focusing on promoting non-violent, respectful relationships and respect for equality. In the media space, we'll create a national communication strategy and get ready to launch a nationwide social marketing campaign in various settings encompassing online safety. I want to stress that in today's digital age, we cannot overlook the pressing matter of online gender-based violence and technology-assisted sexual harassment. We must be equipped to combat online perpetrators and establish mechanisms to regulate and hold social media platforms accountable. We'll also collaborate with the Fiji Bureau of Statistics to conduct the first Fiji National Community Attitude Survey as a baseline for tracking the effectiveness of this NAP over the next 5 years. Our vision is crystal clear. Fijian women and girls in all their diversity can only be truly safe when they stand as equal partners, I want to emphasize our commitment to additional measures ensuring that our survivors have unrestricted access to appropriate and ethical services. And of course, we have our National Domestic Violence Helpline and Child Helpline to also support us in that. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry. Good. It's fine. Thank you, Minister Tabuya. So much to do and so much has been done so far. Yep. Thank you for sharing your actions in Fiji, and so much to be learned also by other countries around the world. So with that, we'll move to Lord Mayor. I wanted to, first of all, recognize your commitment as a city on reducing the threat of extreme urban heat for all, particularly vulnerable people. Under your leadership, you are providing refuge for residents, workers, and visitors during extreme heat events. Can you talk about the process in making your city resilient to heat, and what have been some of the lessons learned in this process?
Good, thank you, and it's wonderful to join you all here today for this important panel. And I want to particularly say thank you to the Adriana Asht Rockefeller Foundation Resilience Centre for partnering with us on many of these initiatives, which I'll come to. I think all of the speakers so far have absolutely framed the proposition that heat exacerbates existing inequalities. And so the focus on heat, which is the biggest killer in Australia as well, puts extra pressure on our health system. We see ambulance call-outs go up by more than 50% during extreme heat, and our hospitals overrun with people seeking help. So it really goes through the entire system. And so Melbourne has been very focused on heat. And I'm going to mention three things particularly. One, which sounds ironic, is about better managing another extreme weather event, and that's extreme storms. By better managing water and capturing that in large underground reservoirs, we are guaranteeing that we have water to be able to keep our city cool during times of heat waves. And this has been a real breakthrough for us, and something we learned as part of the millennial droughts that lasted almost 2 decades that we had to respond to. So by having water and better use of water, we're able to better cool our cities, and that means that we have greener gardens in the summertime, for example. I wanted to particularly say we've just had our hottest winter on record in Melbourne. Average 1.53 degrees higher than normal. And this gives us a sense going into a global south summer of what is ahead. And we are really pleased with the Adriana Asht Rockefeller Foundation Resilience Centre to have appointed chief heat officers. To this end, when we are, and Eleni, Tiffany Crawford's here, absolutely incredible initiative to bring a focus, both awareness and investment and delivery to heat initiatives. And I also mention this because we've talked a lot about women and the impact on women of heat. But in our city, women are leading the solutions also to heat. And I think it's a good way to enable and empower women to be part of the solutions as well. In terms of our chief heat officers, some of the initiatives have been simple but absolutely life transforming, from things like cool kits that we can make available to vulnerable members of our community. Overwhelmingly, women now over 55 are the largest growing cohort of people experiencing domestic violence in our city. Providing them with kits to be able to cope when they are often the most vulnerable because they're living on our streets or they're living in parks is absolutely essential. We're providing sanctuaries. Most people leave cities when it's hot because of the urban heat island effect. We need cities to be a sanctuary for people when it's hot. And so providing more canopy cover, engaging in what we have as an urban forest fund where we are co-investing with members of the community. I think of one initiative where a street in Melbourne that was all brick and bluestone is now a green sanctuary for residents, workers and visitors, a women-led initiative that has also created engagement and community because they have led on the plantings, they lead on the maintenance of these beautiful trees and understory plants, and they've completely transformed that part of the city into a place where people go when it's hot, not escape when it's hot. The last thing I wanted to mention as an initiative is really around innovation. We've got heat sensors now around our city on public transport, in public places. We are monitoring the microclimate to identify where heat is being extremely experienced within our city, to be able to put our efforts, even on a daily basis, into those neighbourhoods that need particular help. And if anybody's a tennis fan like I am, the Australian Open is often one of those places where it might be 35 degrees outside, but if you're sitting on centre court, it can get up over 50 degrees. It sounds like a first world issue, but when you are stuck to your plastic seat and you are in an environment of sitting like this, this is a perfect place for us to try innovation. And one of those things is the way that we use paint. So in that precinct, using paint that is reflective of sunlight rather than absorbing sunlight means that we can really lower temperatures in those places. It is important that we keep innovating. I applaud the incredible efforts underway in other parts of the city, but we are really proud of what we're doing in Melbourne, and it is about being optimistic in the face of a lot of challenges. So thank you.
Mayor, if I may, just one more piece of information from my side, I would be interested to on the solutions front. How are you using early warning systems? How are you using early warning systems in the city to address heat?
A very good point. And President Calderon said earlier, we need to be naming our heat waves. We fully support that. I think we're just going to start naming ours locally to really bring some focus. But yes, we have set up an early warning system, including public announcements through the streets of our city, of course, using social media and text messages. We have hundreds of thousands of people on our databases, the ability to contact them directly, to provide information and to give them an opportunity prior to the heat wave, hopefully, but also during, to be able to take measures. And that might mean planning to spend the day in our libraries or our cooler recreation centres, the refuges that we've set up, making sure that they are able to access water that we give away free during the summer in particular, or using a new program we've got called Cool Routes, which we are doing with Google Maps, where you can pick the cool route to get from A to B, and that guides you through shaded areas, whether that's park canopy cover or it's through an air-conditioned department store, whatever can help people. But this is all in advance, and the preparation people can make by having an early warning of the weather, extreme weather coming.
Thank you for sharing. Now we move to Lenio, my esteemed colleague and friend. You have been called a trailblazer for heat, and you've been working at the national level, global level, as a heat officer, both in Athens and now as a UN Global Chief Heat Officer for UN Habitat. And wanted to understand if you could share with us your priorities for getting the UN family to collaborate on a multi-agency initiative on heat stress.
Specifically on that?
That's a question that I have.
Whatever you want.
Yeah. Forget about the question. Because it's a very beginning still, so I don't have very much to say. So the UN, as most governing bodies, tends to work in silos, and it's really difficult to get them to work together. So I am trying with a few other women to bring different agencies together and create both a governance structure but also a financial instrument that can actually be targeted to cities so that they can, in a multifaceted way, deal with heat. As we have already talked about, heat is something very horizontal. It attacks our economies, our livelihoods, our health, our infrastructure, ecosystems, food security, name it. So you have to have this kind of broad approach to it. Because the money is not a lot, we have to make sure that whatever kind of initiative we do, it has a lot of impact in a lot of different sectors. So we don't go just in a singular way. We create what we call the resilient dividend, or we call otherwise co-benefits. So this is the idea, right? You have to create a multi-stakeholder approach to cities so that you kind of do this kind of work. That's my quick answer to that, but it's still very beginning, so I don't have any big announcements to make.
Thank you, Lenio. On the solution side, which you have a lot of experience,
Yeah.
every city, every country is different, so the impacts will be different. But there are probably some common approaches that we could think of on how to address extreme heat that could apply across the board. Could you share with us some? And also, probably it will be good to demystify whether heat preparedness is something that is costly or not.
Okay, so I always think of heat solutions in three big categories in cities. And one has to do with awareness raising, as we said, categorization, naming, early warning system. The second one has to do with preparedness, which is like the different measures that we can take to protect the most vulnerable during heat waves. Like, what can we do? Usually they're easier, they're not very capital intensive, and we can put them together just to make sure. We already mentioned several of these, like just to protect the people during extreme heat. And the last category is redesign. How can we redesign our cities so they stop being so hot? Because now our cities are like heat traps, and we have to figure out how to really make changes in our cities to make them cooler. So there are a lot of different ways that we can approach things, and generally, as you said, we can standardize stuff. I mean, we can generally kind of create early warning systems for all, which is something that the UN has put as a priority, and it can go to every city. You just have to figure out where are your vulnerable people, who are your vulnerable people, how do they get their information, contact them, and set up, a system that information goes to them. And this. So every time locally, it's different because there's different types of vulnerability and exposure in each city and each part of the world. But the general principle is the same. And, it should be established, and then, cities should figure it out and implement it, I think. The same with green nature, bringing nature into cities. I mean, it's a general principle. We have to figure out what kind of trees we need for each city and what kind of trees we need in, for example, informal settlements as opposed to, in American cities that have enormous spaces to kind of plant things. And how can we make sure that the trees that we choose are the right trees for 30 years from now, et cetera, right? And so every time the localization is important because it's specific, but the general principle is we should just adopt it. Put guidelines on and just say 30% of nature and canopy in every city all around the world will save lives. Like these types of things, or guidelines. How do we have to start making it simple for governments, for local governments to take these types of measures. And I think that some basic standard guidelines are really important. And this is part of the work that I'm doing with UN Habitat, is because they have these normative tools that go all around the world in many, many cities to figure out how to make them more equitable and more sustainable. For example, one of these tools is Her City, which was inaugurated last year, which is like, how can we make cities more better for women to use and more addressing like women's needs, because cities are not designed for women. But so how now, my role is, okay, with all these normative tools for designing public spaces, how can we fold in the idea of heat and make sure that the cities, the way we think of cities, prioritizes the idea that our cities in 20 years, in 30 years, in 40 years have to become livable under conditions that might not be.
Thank you so much, Lenio. And we will start wrapping up the session, so please if you can go back to your seats. I would like to invite Warren Evans from the Asian Development Bank. He's the Special Envoy for Climate Change for the closing remarks.
Thanks very much, Jorge. And Jorge and I worked together many, many moons ago in the World Bank, so it's great to see you again. Let me first start off by congratulating Zani, my colleague from the World Bank, from the ADB, from the Asian Development Bank. I hope nobody's taking notes here. For organizing this, and excuse me, more important, for bringing this issue to the forefront of what we're doing in ADB. The heat waves that we've experienced the last 3 years in our region have been very painful experiences, along with all the other climate impacts that we've suffered. But because heat is the silent killer, it was not at the top of our agenda as we developed our climate change action plan. It is now. And congratulations to Zani for pulling that off. This has been an unbelievably rich discussion, and for me to try and summarize is kind of silly. But I do have 3 key takeaways. First, the impacts of heat on people, ecosystems, and our social and economic security require urgent attention. That's very clear from today. More clear is that among the people most affected are women and girls. And because of the work that they engage in, their care roles, social and cultural norms, we have to shift the way we look at this challenge and really focus on that special situation that women and girls face. But the good news is that from the panel and from earlier speakers, the good news is that even though this is a huge challenge, there is a lot of progress already being made in Melbourne and Fiji, great examples of what's happening now, actions being taken. We need to replicate those, scale them up, and do it very quickly. From the looming threat that we face, a good question is, what's ADB going to do about it? So the announcement today of this technical assistance is a very powerful and important announcement, and we're very proud of this, and we're very proud of our partnership with RSTRUC. But the real challenge is, what are the actions that this this technical assistance is going to drive? And my view is that what we have to do in ADB now, throughout our region, 7 of the 10 most affected countries by heat waves are in our region. Excuse me. We have to integrate action on heat into everything we do. We already look at everything we do through a climate lens, but we need to tailor the investments that we support in our developing member countries like Fiji to make sure that we take every opportunity that we can to take action on the heat challenge, the heat risks to women and girls. And I think that's the TA is going to be instrumental in enabling us to understand what that is. What is it that we need to do? Once we know that, it will not be that difficult to actually make adjustments in what we invest in, what we support. And it doesn't matter whether it's a road, an urban project, a water resource project, an ocean project. It doesn't matter. We can take action through everything that we do on this challenge. And I think that is the challenge for ADB. So with that, I want to thank the speakers, the panel. This has been fantastic, and we're very proud at ADB to be able to work with you all and push this agenda forward quickly and at scale. Thank you.